Hi folks, I wanted to go over how to make this particular part from the CSWA practice exam. It's got quite a few features. Now, rather than going through the whole thing in its entirety and taking up quite a bit of time, I decided I was going to show you by rolling back how I started the whole thing. As I mentioned before, one of the best ways of doing something like this is to start off with a block that is the size of A, B, and C that you are given, and then start carving away at it. So on our very first kind of extrude cut, it's really just taking off the chunk on the top right. And I started on purpose the whole part from the top right. I'm going to do everything this way and then moving all the way to the left. So that one should be pretty straightforward. All I did is a sketch on that front face. Okay. Moving forward, I cut out this bottom piece, and I'll show you what the sketch looks like on that one. Once again, we are on that front face, so make sure you select that front face. You were given a 35 millimeter height of that. It's not quite a center line because it's not in the center of the part, but it is the center of all of the upcoming features that we're going to be having. So make sure you draw that along as a guide, and then 20 millimeters as a width of this start of the part. They also give you the radius, and I don't have that on here, but they give you that radius of 20, and notice where it starts off, right? Oh, I already have that dimension somewhere else. So it starts right from this point right there. So you make your part, do your angle, and then cut it out. Oh, and the cut in, remember that it is only 9 millimeters. Okay, 9 millimeters inwards. Okay, so moving forward, go to the next thing. I drilled out that hole. This one is all the way through, and it is once again at that same center line, that 35 millimeters up, and is exactly halfway through, halfway of the distance of this 20 millimeter line. On the next one, it's a little bit more complicated. This is the one at the bottom. The way to do it, and I'll go ahead and bring up the sketch. As you can see that I've got two center lines, and they're kind of crisscrossing. It doesn't matter if they're center lines. It doesn't matter if they cross or not. But I went ahead and extended them out, measured 120 degrees and the other 45 degrees, just as I was told. The start of this one line is 15 millimeters in, and that'll kind of give me a place to start it. 15, and then 40 is the end of this one. And you can put points if you wanted to kind of help you along. So the start from left to right of this line is 15 plus 40. The start of this other line is at 15. So then I go ahead and I make the actual lines. I can make the line all the way to the corner and down, and then put in a 10 millimeter sketch fillet. That's how I did that one. And then you go ahead and cut it all the way through. On the next one, I start moving in towards the back. So this guy here, I decided that the best way to do it would be to cut it, but cut it from the back. So turn your part around, select that face, right? And then using, once again, that 35 millimeter line that you're given from before, and you can redraw it as a center line, then use a, give this more dimension on here. Then go ahead and draw a circle that is 30 millimeters in radius. Well, now when you do that, that gives you a whole circle, but then you trim it out by completing this part here, which is where you're going to cut it. All right. The main thing we're worried about is this bottom piece. I don't need to have it all the way over, but it just made it a heck of a lot easier. So once I've cut that out, and how deep did I cut it? In this particular case, I cut it 42 millimeters, and what I did is I subtracted the width of this part from the entire part so that I can find out how deep that is. Alright, moving forward. I then moved on to making the circular cuts. For this one, you can't do them all at once. So I made my first this outside circle, right? And they do give you dimension of 30 millimeters where to start it. And then this other one inside. When I do that, it's going to cut out this donut, right? So I went ahead and did that. And the extrusion depth for this one was 13 millimeters. And I just gathered that from the drawings that they gave me. All right, so that still doesn't quite look like our part yet, but we move on to the next cut, which is this center portion of it. So in here, edit this one. I did the same thing. I have two circles, an outer one and an inner one, to cut out this center donut, leaving that center piece sticking out. Okay. And for that one, the extrusion depth is 5 millimeters. Okay, so now I have this, and I keep going down. Now it's to the part where I need to cut out this other circle. The main thing that I'm worried about is this here, right? So that is going to be based on the diameter or radius of this circle out here, which is also centered on that 35 millimeter center line, a certain distance up, right? So you go ahead and measure 35 millimeters up, and that should give you your part. And I believe the size of this is 50. So once I have that and I cut it all the way through, I'm left with a few things to kind of trim out. The way I did that is I went back to the rear of the part and I sketched out this little piece to cut out. Okay, so all I'm doing is trimming out the rest of it. I trimmed out this other part by and I'll go back and show you here by just tracing around here, and then leaving one more hole in the top to cut out. And lastly, this other part is a little bit tricky. So let me go ahead and show you. So on this one, you start off with a completely square piece. You draw a sketch based on 20 millimeters. That's the angle that they give you, and 18 millimeters down. So you start from the edge, draw your line, put a dot at 18 millimeters, and cut out that 20. And then cut it all the way through to the back. Lastly, this is a little bit tough to tell, you cut out that big chunk of the back. So if you thought you were done and your part is way overweight, it means you missed this particular chunk. And that one's, once you realize that it's there, it's relatively easy. It's just cutting off the corner, starting from the top face, 12 by 50, and you cut it all the way across. Now make sure that you have identified your material as copper, and then you can go ahead and do under mass properties, under evaluate. Mine was 1252.58, and I believe the answer is supposed to be 1280, well within the 1%. So that is it. We are good to go.